discipline number 1. The first discipline is what is called focus on the wildly important. Focus on the wildly important. This is a discipline around narrowing your focus. And what they say about discipline number 1 is that no team should have more than 3 wildly important goals. And you don't call anything wildly important goal unless it has a beginning, which is an X, an end line, which is a Y, and a timeline. So it has to have a beginning, an end, and a timeline, because that's only what makes it measurable. Then discipline number 2 is act on the lead measures. Act on the lead measures. While discipline 1 is on focus, the discipline 2 is on action. What exactly are you busy doing? So you take your wildly important goal that you have defined X to Y by when. Let's say, for example, I want to improve my communication skills from maybe an 8 score to a 10 score. Suppose that is my wildly important goal by the year ending 2020. Okay? December 31, 2020. So what would be the lead measures? The lead measures are those activities that will directly deliver my improvement in communication skills. That's what is the lead measure. The activities that will directly deliver. And these activities have to be things that I have the power to execute. So that's discipline number 2, so that you focus on high impact activities to drive your results. Then it talks about discipline number 3. Discipline number 3, keep a compelling scoreboard. A compelling scoreboard. The purpose of the scoreboard is to motivate your team with the right kind of scoreboard. So on that scoreboard, they can track the lead measures, whether they are moving, whether they are not moving. They can also make commitments and identify what the challenges are. Which takes me to discipline number 4, a cadence of accountability. Remember, these 4 disciplines are actually attempting to deal with the fundamental challenges of execution. So if you have a clearly defined goal and you have lead measures and you're keeping a compelling scoreboard, until you install a cadence of accountability in which people gather together. What is that cadence? Cadence of accountability means setting a rhythm of regular progress review meetings. And there are rules about this meeting. You do not
let's look at the chapters. So I'll do a quick run through all the chapters and just do a quick summary of each. Number 1 says, has your marriage lost its sizzle? And here, Pastor John is talking about the fact that problems in marriages are caused by high expectation, no preparation. The failure to recognize differences between the sexes, which we already have seen some of it there. And then the issue of sex, very, very critical. He describes in detail some of the issues that has to do with that. Chapter 2 looks at what women want. And he says what women want is love me completely, love me passionately and romantically. And that attraction is not necessarily all sexual. He says that women want that, you know, that I'm divinely different and I won't change. And that communication needs to be open so that they want emotional intimacy and they also want spiritual intimacy, and that submission should be mutual. In chapter 3, he speaks about, he writes about love secrets that men must know. He says that, well, what you walk away from is what God gives you. So you must learn sacrificially from some things in terms of gaining the love of your partner. That love is not a license to change and control your partner, and that don't ever believe that you totally understand your wife. Stop the blame game. And if you do make mistakes, acknowledge and apologize. He recommends that you learn to love and that you understand that sexual fulfillment is not enough to sustain marriage. And that if you're the jealous type, jealousy will drive your wife away. And that in all things, Men must also learn to forgive themselves. If you made a mistake, you apologize for it. Move on.
Chapters 4 and 5 talk very, very, very interestingly about two concepts. One, food to avoid, and the second concept is foods that you can eat. Some of what you see in that book, which obviously I can't go through, will shock you. Some of us know this already, that monosodium glutamate is a complete no-no, the one that we have in seasoning cubes, because there are over 20 diseases, which I'm not going to list today, but you can find it in the book, that are associated with monosodium glutamate, and it actually is carcinogenic. Again, he spoke a lot about pesticides. That to me is a big hard thing, because especially DDT and those chemicals that even have been banned in other countries, we have it, things like sniper and stuff like that. So pesticide exposure changes areas of the brain involved in multiple sclerosis, epilepsy, Alzheimer's disease. Just as you thought it was, you couldn't bear any more of this bad news, he spoke about the dangers of sugar and also the dangers of sweeteners. Dr. Colbert expertly navigates the terrain of hydrogenated fats and oils, proving that not all fats are equal. You got to get the book to really, grasp and appreciate the importance of what he speaks about. There's another big section on the free radicals, which are atomic structures that are formed as a result of stress and all sorts of bad things that happen in the body. And he talks again about the free radicals that cause disease. And that is the first half of the matter. The second half of the matter is what I'm moving to right now, which is the second half of the matter is the foods that we should be eating. And these are lots of vitamins, supplements, and all that. And these phytonutrients, he calls them phytonutrients. I know a little bit about phytonutrients because phytonutrients are about 2,000 of them. And you find them in these foods that I'm highlighting here right now. I hope we can all see the screen. You find them in all these beautiful foods, all of them which we have all over the world. I don't think we really have any excuse. You can see in this rainbow of health where we have coconut, we have cabbage, we have garlic, onion. That's the white benefits for immune support. This is what the phytonutrients do for us. You can see in the green part, which is the apples, the avocado pears, and all our ugu and all those green veg, detoxification. And then you can see in the yellow bit, we have the pineapple, the corn, and it just gives beauty. It makes your skin fresh. And this is just the tip of the iceberg, I tell you. And look at the orange bit. You know, we have our carrots, our pumpkins, which are very, very prevalent in Africa and the tropics also. And they can help you to prevent cancer. And then we have those that help with heart health, the red parts, which is the watermelon. And even we have purple. We have our beetroots and all that in all over the world. So we really need to dig into this information with regards to phytonutrients and how they really can help us. Dr. Colbert also.
If you want to be a leader, the greatest attribute you need is humility. Humility is the key lesson in this book. And there are many examples in it that talks about how you can fail, even if you have all the skills in the world, simply if you lack that attribute called humility. Humility, absent in a leader, is absolutely guaranteed to result in failure for the leader and failure for the team. That's the first point that comes out graphically in this book. And in the combat field, the example they gave, humility is the primary reason where a very talented officer can actually be dismissed from the naval sea. And the second point, and I love this point a lot, is that if you really want to be a great leader, then you have to be a great follower. So being a great leader, you must be ready to follow even your junior staff, especially when they are the subject matter experts. That's one of the greatest hallmark of a great leader. And then, like I said, and I repeat it, when you're a leader and you're in a position of leadership, once a decision has been taken, you must lead with, there's no such thing as I wasn't part of it. You must follow your boss, follow your leader with absolute integrity, regardless of whether you are part of the decision or you agree with the decision or not. That's part of belonging in that leadership team. It's a crucial lesson. The other thing, and I'll talk about it when we start to unpack this. The other thing is that as a great leader, you must care about every single member of your team, but you must take full responsibility for the success of the assignment. That means, what that is saying is that the objective of the team is greater than any single individual in the team, including yourself. The objective of the team, that means the goal of the team, is of greater responsibility for you than any single member of the team or even yourself. That was a great lesson that came out going through this book. And then obviously the final one, which is really this was the focus of the book, what the book tried repeatedly, and the two authors tried repeatedly to emphasize, probably in correction of extreme leadership, the book that came before, is that there's no such thing as extremes in leadership. Leadership is always about multiple dichotomies. They've talked about 12 dichotomies here, but actually there are far more that you face in your life as a leader. But leadership is always about dichotomies. Your job, your life as a leader, whether at home or in your place of assignment, is a continuous balancing act. You must be reading the team continuously and continually shifting the dial back and front to achieve that balance. And that balance will shift on a daily basis sometimes, it will shift on a weekly basis sometimes, and in a month it will shift multiple times. So you are constantly as a leader in that balancing act and learning to walk the fine line between the extremes. So that's the song.
Every child has a very special way of perceiving love. There are 5 ways that children, indeed all of us, speak and understand emotional love. These are physical touch, words of affirmation, as we've already said, quality time, gifts, and acts of service. If you have several children in your family, the chances are they'll speak different languages. For just as children often have different personalities, they may hear in different love languages. Typically, 2 children need to be loved in different ways. Whatever love language your child understands best, he needs it expressed in one way, unconditionally. Unconditional love shows love to a child no matter what they do. A child who wants you to spend quality time with him or her would see you on the computer. Now let me try to practicalize this. Would see you, mom, working on the computer, and she'll come and put her palms over your eyes. She's searching for attention. She sees you on the computer. She does that, and you don't budge in her you don't look at her. And then the next thing, she comes by and she taps you and runs into the kitchen. The next thing she comes, she picks up your book from the table and goes and sits down pretending she's watching TV. That child is actually crying out for attention. And the child may go into the kitchen and drop a plate. And the tendency is to get upset and say the child's name is Kemi. Kemi, why have you dropped that plate? That child would rather attract negative attention than not attract attention. So
and it starts with your mind. You have to convince your mind that you need to go on this journey. You can read 100 books, you can have 100 people telling you, but it is in your mind that you have to first of all start. Does that make sense? And that was, they put that powerfully in the book, that it's your mind. And it's in your mind, and I think that's with everything. It's in your mind that you can be defeated. It's in your mind that you can have success. I've seen people who have lost weight from 700, 800, 900 pounds. So when you convince yourself and your mind is in the same place with what your desire is, then you can go out, engage your spirituality, engage the tools, right? And then forge ahead. The Daniel plan was not only about food. I think that's what we need to be aware of. There was movement in it. It talks about exercise. Like all those things that I mentioned, you know, it talks about your spirituality. You cannot just try and lose weight and get well without your spirituality. So you have to be awake to your spirituality. You know, your relationships, like I said, some of the things they didn't mention was things like fast, because if we're going to look at Daniel's plan, he was actually fasting a lot, but they didn't really mention fasting. And if you look at it in Isaiah 58, I think 54, 58, that talks about the perfect fast. It says that when you have fasted the perfect way, then your health springs forth speedily. And then, you know, in Isaiah as well, it also says that those who wait upon the Lord will renew their strength. We don't have enough time for me to take you through the different levels of fasting and what the benefits you get from those different levels. But one thing they missed out in this book was about fasting. It is important to fast. It is important to, I cannot emphasize it more. You know, when
now, teamwork as one of our values is deliberate, because the values are your values are the heartbeat of every business. The values will drive the culture of every business. The values will benchmark what is acceptable against what is not acceptable in any business. The values are the spirit, the life, the bloodline of any business that helps them make the right decisions, guides them as a compass. So teamwork as a guiding compass for us as a value is very important. They say that John Maxwell himself says that one is too small a number to achieve greatness. So I can have the idea, I can be the visionary, but I need a team of people who are connected to me in terms of the way I think, in terms of the way I act, behavior, and in terms of the way I speak, my interaction and communication with people. If I am unable to build a team that is aligned with the same set of values that I am aligned with, then it is unlikely that we will go to the same place, because that is a wheel that is not balanced. So to find that congruence and alignment, you have to be able to understand the dynamics of teamwork, how teams work, how you form the formation of a team. And John Maxwell takes us through this in the book very, very well. The different types of people who are catalysts, the people who are catalysts who get things done, the people who are the thinkers, who like to think but don't actually get things, they don't get things done, but they're fantastic thinkers. They have ideas. They can bring ideas to the table. But you have also got to have the catalysts who can execute. They get things done. They get it started, they get it moving, and they get it done. So if you want to scale a business, you've got to understand the dynamics of a team and how the team works. So John Maxwell goes to tell us that a lot of the times, it is dangerous for the entrepreneur to just focus on the vision and the dream, which is what I did. In those early stages, I focused on the dream. This is what I want to do, and you have to do it. Whether you like it or not, you have to do this because this is what I want. I wasn't intuitive. I wasn't in tune with other people's needs and other people's wants. If you are not in tune with a team, you don't know who they are. You don't know what they want out of life. You are not aligned with that team. I keep on using the word alignment because to me, that is the major function of teamwork. If you are unable to align with the group that you call there's the inner caucus, there's the inner circle. He also tells you about the inner circle. He tells you should be careful about the people you bring into your inner circle. Those people must share your values. Those people must understand your vision. You have to be a good communicator to be able to tell them what your dream is like, so that it brings clarity to them. You must know who you are and what you want to achieve. In doing that, you help clarify issues of identity, around identity for them as well. It's important that these things are the soft underbelly of teens. They're not hard things, but they're some of the most difficult things to achieve. If you understand what I'm saying. The deep level of worship is when you are worshiping God despite pain. When you are worshiping God, when you don't even understand, things are not going well in your life, but you are still able to worship God. He said that is the type of worship that is acceptable even unto God, where you can give God pleasure. I'd also like to read a little part from the book on that. It says, in worship, we are to offer our bodies as living sacrifices. Now, we usually associate the concept of sacrifice with something dead, but God wants you to be a living sacrifice. He wants you to live for Him. So that's been talking about how you can bring God pleasure, the type of life you can lead, your worship, type of worship, how you can become best friends with God. You need to look at all these pointers to ensure that you are actually living your life for God's pleasure. So I go quickly to the next one. The next part talks about a second purpose of God for our life. We are formed for God's family. He said formed for God's family. Here he alluded to the fact that God wanted a family, and so He created you and I. When we give our lives unto the Lord Jesus, He becomes our Father, and then we become His children. And our brethren becomes our sisters and our brothers, and the church becomes God's spiritual family. The next chapter, it says, God says relationships are what life is all about. And because God is love, the most important lesson He wants you to learn on earth is how to love. Here He was talking about, Father, sometimes we say, I want to build on my relationship. I want to find time, quality time to build relationship with my spouse, with my children. Those relationships, I'm learning how to love, because God Himself is love. The next chapter, it says, following Christ includes belonging, not just believing. A Christian without a church home is like an organ without a body. It says we must belong. You must belong to a church home. It says when you don't belong, you are saying, because it says that the church is Jesus's bride, and then the church is the body of Christ. And so it says when you don't belong to a church home, you are saying to Jesus that, Jesus, I love you, but I detest your wife. Jesus, I accept you, but I reject your body. So he says we must belong to a church home.